Hi, my name is Alicia and I'm here to help you improve your communication skills in Spanish. This video is the ultimate guide how to chat in Spanish. We'll begin with a short introduction. You will learn in this guide for English speakers how to introduce yourself in Spanish, how to make small talk in Spanish, how to ask personal questions in Spanish, how to talk about your likes and dislikes and hobbies in Spanish, and some Spanish filler words. So you see a lot of information for you, and you do not need to have knowledge of the language for this guide, but even if you do already speak some Spanish, the information will be helpful. Some expressions have the variation of tú, which in Spanish is informal, and usted. In Spanish it is formal. This is indicated with the slash. And you also have a vocabulary list, a cheat sheet, exercises with answers, MP3, and other free materials to practice. You will find it in the video description below. And let's begin with some ways of introducing yourself and others in Spanish. You may already know these expressions, but don't worry because, well, watching this video will refreshen your memory even if you already know these kind of things. So, in Spanish, you can ask, ¿Cómo te llamas? What is your name? And you can ask, ¿Cómo te llamas? And also, ¿Cómo se llama usted? ¿Cómo te llamas? We are being informal by using tú. ¿Cómo se llama usted? We are being formal by usting usted. And in English, both phrases are translated as what is your name? And you have three ways of answering this question. You may say, yo me llamo, and then your name. Yo me llamo Alicia. You also may want to say, mi nombre es Alicia. My name is Alicia. And also possible, soy Alicia. I am Alicia. So you see, you have the choice here, whatever you like best. And you will say te presento a if you are introducing another person. For instance, I have my friend John, in Spanish Juan. Then I say te presento a Juan. I introduce you to John. And if, the friend is Maria, then you say te presento a Maria. This, you see, the sentence is the same. Okay, te presento a, and then you say the name of the person. But pay attention. You can say the same thing by changing a little the phrase. Este es what you say when you introduce a man like Juan. Este es Juan. This is John. And you will say esta es María if you are introducing a woman. In English, you just say this is and the name of the person. But in Spanish, pay attention. Este with a man, esta with a woman. All right? Well, if you, want to say in Spanish, nice to meet you, you can say mucho gusto. Mucho gusto is perfect. You can say that in any situation when you're meeting someone for the first time. And you may want to, change it a little bit. If you are a man, you will say encantado. If you want to say nice to meet you. If you are a woman, to say nice to meet you, you will say encantada instead. So you see the ending here is different because it's referring to the speaker. A man says encantado, a woman says encantada. And this is the way it works. And if someone, is saying nice to meet you, you will react, all right? And you will say igualmente, likewise. Igualmente is a very general word, okay? You can say igualmente to reciprocate anything. If you want to be more specific, then when you meet someone new and the person says mucho gusto, nice to meet you, the reaction can be el gusto es mío. The pleasure is mine. Okay, so to mucho gusto, you may react with igualmente or with el gusto es mío. All right? Well, you have all these phrases here. You can stop the video to read them. Well, take your time to do that if you want to, but if you want to keep on learning new interesting things, well, keep on watching this video. The material, you can download it, as I told you, in the video description below. So now we're going to learn how to ask, how are you? And I have a video where I will teach you a lot of ways of asking that and answering that in Spanish. You will find this video in the video description too, okay? But now let's keep things very simple and have some basic vocabulary to ask and to answer, how are you? In Spanish, you can say when you meet someone that you know on the street, you may say, qué alegría verte por aquí. The meaning is, well, that is nice to see you around here. We are using tú, which is informal because, well, it's someone that we already know. So we are on a first name basis, we are using tú. So in Spanish you say, qué alegría verte por aquí. Good finding you, meeting you here. And you may also want to say, cuánto tiempo sin verte, which is, well, like saying long time no see in English. Cuánto tiempo sin verte. What you are saying in Spanish is it's been a long time without seeing you, but well, in English it doesn't sound so well. But this is what we say in Spanish. Cuánto tiempo sin verte. And you can ask, ¿qué hay de nuevo? What's new? Okay? And this is polite and you're showing interest. ¿Qué hay de nuevo? What are the news? And you may also ask about another person. ¿Sabes algo sobre Juan? Have you heard anything about Juan? Just like this. ¿Sabes algo sobre? Do you know anything about this third person? And you can also ask, ¿qué tal la familia? ¿Qué tal is a very general way of asking, how are you doing? ¿Qué tal? If you add la familia, you're being more specific. You're asking, how is your family doing? And this is not considered rude in Spanish in no case, because, well, you're showing interest on the life of this person. So if you know the family of this acquaintance of yours, you may want to be polite by asking, ¿qué tal la familia? And the person will, well, say whatever he or she wants to reveal about the family, but it's not necessary to give a long explanation. You may just answer bien, bien, and you are done. And you may also want to ask, ¿qué tal el trabajo? You're also being specific here, but asking about the job. How are things at work? And to ask that at a party or a social gathering, it may be a little boring because people, when they are at a party, they want to have fun. They do not want to talk about their 9-to-5 job. So you can ask that, but it may be not a very interesting topic to discuss at a party. And you also have, ¿qué tal tu día? ¿Qué tal tu día is a great phrase because you're showing that you care. Please tell me, how was your day? It's better than ask just generically, ¿qué tal? ¿Qué tal is polite, but it's very, well, simple. You may want to show really that the person you're interested in knowing how was this person's day. So you ask, ¿qué tal tu día? And then the person can react, well, by saying anything, okay? But here are some options in case someone asks you that and you want to have an answer ready to use. So you may say, normal. So it was not bad, it was an ordinary day. And you may also want to say, tranquilo. Tranquilo, it means it was a day that was quiet, but in a positive way. It was quiet, but it was pleasant. And you may also want to say estresante. So the day was stressful. And as I told you, you can, well, say whatever you want, but these are only, well, some ideas for you. Also, you can ask, ¿Qué hiciste hoy? What did you do today? ¿Qué hiciste hoy? And, well, the person will say whatever he or she did using the past tense. So some examples for you are trabajé, I worked. Descansé, I rested. No hice nada, I didn't do anything. Okay, so you may want to use these expressions, or, well, if you already know the grammar, you can have a more complete answer according to your day. And after seeing this, we are going to get to know each other, conocerse. And if you're using tú, you may want to ask, ¿De dónde eres? This is the question, where are you from, when you're using tú, informal in Spanish. And you may want to change it a little bit if you are in a formal situation and you are using usted. So you will ask, ¿De dónde es usted? Where are you from? Both phrases are translated in English as where are you from? But in Spanish, you know that we have tú, usted. And the reaction will be soy de, and then you name a place, whatever you like, ciudad, país, the city or the country that you come from. Soy de Madrid, España, for example. And, well, you want to keep on digging, searching for information about the person, so you ask, ¿Eres de aquí? Instead of asking, where do you come from? ¿Eres de aquí? And if you're using usted, the question will be, ¿Es usted de aquí? And soy de aquí, I am from here, or no soy de aquí, I am not from here. And you can ask, ¿Dónde vives? Where do you live? This is tú. If you switch to usted, then you ask, ¿Dónde vive usted? And the reaction is, yo vivo en, and then you name the city that you live in, the country that you live in, whatever you want to say. Yo vivo en Madrid, España, for example. Pay attention that I am pronouncing vivo, and this is generally what we say in Spanish. In case you want to learn a little bit about the Spanish pronunciation, you have an extra video about this topic in the video description. Alright? So after this, another question. ¿Vives aquí? Do you live here? ¿Vive usted aquí? Do you live here? But using usted, formal. And you answer, yo no vivo aquí, I do not live here, or yo vivo aquí, I do live here. Okay? Yo estoy aquí de vacaciones. You say that if you want to say, I am here on vacation. Yo estoy aquí de vacaciones. And you also may want to ask, how old are you? ¿Cuántos años tienes? If you're using tú. ¿Cuántos años tiene usted? If you're using usted. How old are you? And well, in English you ask, how old are you? But in Spanish we phrase it differently. What we are asking literally is, how many years do you have? Okay, because, well, each year it's one more year that we are collecting. So this is the way we think in Spanish. In English it doesn't make any sense, but, well, in Spanish it does for us. So, ¿cuántos años tienes? Is how old are you? And the answer will be, tengo 35 años. The age that you are, you say here, tengo 35 años. I am 35 years old. So in Spanish, you say I am 35 years. I am not, sorry, I have 35 years, okay? In English, I am, but it's a different way of thinking about that kind of things in different languages. Not exactly you're going to say the same thing in Spanish and in English. Sometimes you will, but in this case, it's different. But when you ask the person about the age and you answer, you say tengo, and then how many years you are old. Tengo 35 años. And you also may want to ask the person, what does this person do for a living? ¿Qué haces profesionalmente? If you only ask ¿qué haces?, you are asking what do you do? And well, the person will understand normally that you're asking what do you do for a living. But in case you think you're not being explicit enough, you may add profesionalmente. ¿Qué haces profesionalmente? What do you do professionally? What's your, well, occupation right now? And this is informal with tú. With usted, well, ¿qué hace usted profesionalmente? And another way of, well, asking about the person's job is to ask, ¿te gusta tu trabajo? Do you like your job? And you may also ask, ¿estudias o trabajas? Do you study or do you work? And this sentence here is, well, what you see here. Do you study or do you work? It's a very general question, okay? But in Spain, it's used as a very, very cliché pickup line. So if a woman is at a bar and a man asks her, ¿estudias o trabajas? This man is trying to flirt with this woman and he's not being creative at all, okay? So women, be aware of that. If a guy asks you, ¿estudias o trabajas? In Spain, normally he is trying to flirt with you and he isn't very good at it, okay? It's not very original. And, well, you also have soy if you say, well, the name of your occupation. In my case, soy profesora. I am a teacher. Okay? And you can also answer, ahora no estoy trabajando. I am not working at the moment. And you do not have to add anything. You just say that. And maybe the person is curious, wants to know why are you not working, but you do not have to say anything if you don't want to. Ahora no estoy trabajando, and this is polite. And you may also want to ask for a phone number. In Spanish, you ask, ¿me puedes dar tu número de teléfono? Can you give me your phone number? And if you want to say no, you just say no. But if you do want to give your phone number, you say, mi teléfono es 01, my phone number is 01, etc. All right, so all of this, one more time for you. And let's begin our chit-chat. Charlar en español. Let's chat. Well, you can start a conversation with anyone in any situation by saying, hace calor, ¿no? So you are stating a fact. It is hot today. In Spanish, you are not saying today, but it's included in the phrase, hace calor. And then you are including this no. When you add this no at the end of the sentence as a question, you are giving the opportunity to the person to disagree with you or to agree, whatever the person wants to do. So you're being very humble. You're saying, to me, it's hot today. Isn't it? What do you think about it? So no here is a very polite way of trying to engage the person in a conversation. I know it's a very, well, cliche way of starting a conversation, talking about the weather, but it's cliche because it's effective, okay? So, as I told you, you can start a conversation with virtually anyone by talking about the weather. Hace calor, no? It's hot today, isn't it? And you can say the same thing, but the opposite, by saying hace frío, no? It's cold today, isn't it? By saying hace frío, no, you are engaging the person in this conversation that, may be about the weather. If you want, people in Spain, they can have long conversations about the weather. It's amazing. It's very cliche, but people enjoy talking about the weather, and especially complaining about the weather. And people in summer, people complain that it's hot. Of course it's hot, it's summer. What do you expect? And in winter, people love to complain that it's cold. Of course it's cold, it's the winter. Okay, so people love to do that. And if you do not believe me, try that. Go to Spain and start a conversation with people about the weather. And it's very, very high the possibility that the person will engage with you in this conversation. All right? Well, you can also say, qué horror de tráfico, no? And here you're also complaining about the traffic. So you're saying, qué horror de tráfico, no? Traffic was horrible, wasn't it? So by finishing with a question, you are asking the person's opinion, and it's very probable that the person will, get in the conversation with you. Well, hate and complaining will bond people, okay? We like talking about things that we like, but we also enjoy talking about things that we do not like. Okay, this is a very psychological thing, but it works, okay? So complain about something, and at least in Spain, the person will get along, will agree or disagree with you, but you have a conversation, all right? And you also can ask, ¿supiste las noticias? Did you heard the news? Okay, did you hear the news? And any news, okay? The person will, start talking with you about any topic that you want to talk. And if you are at a party, you may ask, ¿quieres bailar? Do you want to dance? ¿Quieres bailar? And if you ask a man if he is single, you ask, ¿estás soltero? And if you ask a woman, ¿estás soltera? Okay, so soltero means unmarried, single. And masculino, soltero. Femenino, soltera. Okay, and you may want to ask, ¿tienes fuego? To ask if the person has a lighter. Actually, you're asking, do you have fire? Okay, and people 20 years ago, people did smoke a lot in Spain, but not anymore. So it's not very probable that the person will have a lighter for you. So trying to engage someone in a conversation by asking, ¿tienes fuego? Nowadays, it's not very effective. I will not recommend this to you, but many people do ask how to say that, so I'm answering the question. To ask for a lighter in Spanish, you say, ¿tienes fuego? But it's not very useful. It's better to ask, ¿tienes horas? If you ask, ¿tienes horas? You're asking the person, what time is it? Is another way of phrasing it in Spanish. ¿Tienes horas? And this way the person will tell you the time, and you may use it as an excuse to start a more interesting conversation if you want to. Okay? And you see that all these phrases are with tú. Tú tienes horas, because, let's suppose we already know the person, and we, do not need to use usted, which is very formal. Let's, talk to someone using tú, because, you're at a party, or, you are in an informal situation. So you ask, ¿tienes horas? And you may also ask, ¿te apetece tomar un café? And this question is, would you like to have a coffee? And of course, it can mean, do you want to have a coffee, literally? Or it may be understood as an invitation to have a more private conversation, maybe even a date. It can be interpreted this way, okay? It depends a little bit on the situation, of course. And if you want to say yes, you just say sí, and you may also even want to add por favor, yes, please, it would be a pleasure. If you want to say no, you say no. But just saying no is not very polite, because in the Spanish-speaking mentality, if you say yes, okay, you do not have to add anything else. But if you say no, if you're rejecting an invitation, it's not polite to leave it this way. So you have to add an excuse, a reason for not wanting to do that, or just saying, I am sorry, but no. This is what you say. No, lo siento. No, I am sorry. So you are polite, you are declining, but you're not being rude when you say, no, lo siento. No, I am sorry. And you may also want to say, no tengo ganas de charlar. I do not feel like talking. And this sentence is not rude per se, so it may be interpreted rudely if you use a tone that is not very friendly. If you say, no tengo ganas de charlar, so this is a little rude. But if you say, no tengo ganas de charlar, so the person will understand that you're really not in the mood for any chit-chat and will leave you alone. So your tone of voice will reveal what you feel like. But the phrase is, I do not feel like talking. And, well, the person should understand that. You may want to be a little more, well, frontal by saying, no me molestes. Do not bother me. Okay, leave me alone. And, well, here you are being really straightforward. It's not necessarily rude. Your tone can make it rude, but no me molestes is just leave me alone. And you may also want to say, no hablo español. Of course, no hablo español has the meaning of I do not speak Spanish. And I have another video where I'll tell you how to solve communication problems like not speaking Spanish. So take a look at it. It's in the video description. But if someone is trying to have a chat with you and you do not want to say, I don't want to talk with you, as a foreigner, you say, no hablo español, and the person will leave you alone normally. Okay, so you can use it as a trick to, being left alone if you want to. No hablo español. And you can say, no tengo tiempo. No tengo tiempo is accepted everywhere. So if you do not have time, the person will leave you alone. No tengo tiempo. I do not have time. And if someone is on the street asking you for money, this may happen. You may want to say, no tengo dinero. I do not have money. And the person will leave you alone, of course. So here you have all these phrases one more time. And let's start asking personal questions. Preguntas personales. And, well, you can begin by asking if the person has children. ¿Tienes hijos? Do you have children? No, no tengo. No, I don't. Or you may give a complete answer. No, no tengo hijos. No, I don't have children. If you do, you say, sí, tengo un hijo. Yes, I have a son. Sí, tengo una hija. Yes, I have a daughter. And you may want to ask someone, ¿cuándo es tu cumpleaños? When is your birthday? And the reaction, mi cumpleaños es el día, in my case, 10 de diciembre. So you just need to say the date of your birthday. And you may hear when you're traveling in Spain or Latin America that someone asks you, ¿cuál es tu signo del zodíaco? Okay, this is, well, it can happen. Okay, so instead of asking your birthday, the person asks what is your sign in the astrology, and you answer soy. In my case, soy Sagitario. I'm a Sagittarius. And this is a way of trying to know the person better without asking questions directly. So if you know a little bit about astrology, you may want to know the person's astrological sign in order to gather some information without being, well, intrusive and, well, asking things directly. Okay, so don't consider it rude or anything if someone asks you that. Okay, and it's maybe just an excuse to talk to the person. Okay, it may not necessarily mean anything. Maybe just person just wants to chat with you, and this is an excuse for that. And you also may want to say, he oído que te gusta, and then you add a topic. You have already made some research. You found out that this person likes, for instance, beer, cerveza, and then you ask, he oído que te gusta la cerveza. I heard you like beer. By saying that, you are showing the person that you are interested and that you are willing to talk about the topic that this person is passionate about. So it's a very friendly way of engaging someone in a conversation. He oído que te gusta. I heard you like. Okay, this is a great tip. Okay, just, well, show interest on whatever the person likes. And you may also ask, ¿qué lenguas hablas? What languages do you speak? This is also great because when you talk about the foreign languages that you speak, well, you are also speaking about your life. Why do you speak this language? Did you travel to the country? Whatever. So it's a great way of asking a personal question that it's not too personal, but it gives you an excuse to, well, chat. ¿Qué lenguas hablas? What languages do you speak? And you may also want to ask about the hobbies. ¿Tienes aficiones? Do you have hobbies? And the answer is sí, me gusta. And you do not need more grammar than that. You just say, sí, yes, I do, because everybody has hobbies, all right? I believe so. Me gusta, I like, and then you add the verb in infinitive. Me gusta bailar. I like to dance. And with that, you have, well, something to talk about. Sí, me gusta bailar. Or you may want to say, sí, me gusta la cerveza. Yes, I like beer. I'm a beer, well, expert. So you have something to talk about. All right? And if you want to make it a little more complex, you may say, en mi tiempo libre, in my spare time. And then you must conjugate the verb. En mi tiempo libre, bailo. In my spare time, I dance. If you do not want to be so specific, you can keep things very simple by saying, sí, me gusta bailar. And this is all you need. And you may also ask, ¿te gusta el deporte? Do you like sports? And if the person doesn't, well, no. And if the person does like sport, sí, el fútbol. Yes, soccer. And then you have a topic of conversation. You may also ask, ¿te gusta salir de fiesta? Do you like going partying or go out and party? ¿Te gusta salir de fiesta? And ¿te gusta viajar? Do you like traveling? Of course, most everyone likes to go on vacation, so this is a great topic, okay? Use it. Or even be very specific. You can ask, ¿dónde pasaste tus últimas vacaciones? And you are using the past tense to ask, where did you spend your last holiday? And you answer, estuve en, I was in, and then you say the name of the place. Estuve en Nueva York. I was in New York, for example. And you may want to ask, ¿quieres hacer algo el fin de semana? So you are asking, do you want to do something on the weekend? And of course, it can be interpreted that I am, inviting you to do something together on the weekend. So it's normally interpreted this way. It's an invitation, but an open invitation. And you may want to be more, generic and ask, ¿tienes planes para el fin de semana? Do you have plans for the weekend? It's not an invitation, not necessarily. You are, trying to gather information, and maybe after gathering the information, you will make a proposal, okay? But this way, you are not inviting the person. And you may answer, sí, estoy ocupado, if you are busy and you are a man. Sí, estoy ocupada, yes, I am busy. And you say that if you are a woman. And you may say, todavía no tengo planes. I do not have any plans. Not yet. Todavía no tengo planes. Or you may want to ask, ¿qué hiciste el último fin de semana? What did you do last weekend? So, no problem here. The person will tell you whatever he or she wants to reveal, okay? But it's very polite to, show interest on the person. And, as we are talking about the past, you will use the past tense. Some examples of response will be, yo salí con amigos. I went out with friends. Or, yo me quedé en casa. I stayed home. And another topic that's really useful to talk with a stranger is to ask the person, ¿tienes mascota? Mascota is not a mascot, it can be, but normally in Spanish, mascota is a pet. And people who have pets, they enjoy talking about them. So, ¿tienes mascota? Do you have a pet? And you may answer, sí, tengo un perro. Yes, I have a dog. Or, sí, tengo un gato. Yes, I have a cat. Okay? And, you may ask the person if this person plays an instrument. ¿Tocas un instrumento? And here you have instrumento, and the verb that, is together with it is tocar. Tocar very generally in Spanish means to touch. But if you are meaning that you play an instrument, you're going to say tocar un instrumento. This is the way to phrase it correctly in Spanish. Okay? You do not say to play. To play, you play soccer or you play a game, but you do not play an instrument in Spanish. Tocar un instrumento. This is the way to say it correctly. And then you say, sí, toco, and then you say whatever you play. Sí, toco el piano. Yes, I play the piano. And you may start a conversation by saying something that you like. Me gusta bailar. I like to dance. ¿Y a ti? How about you? This way, you're already giving some information about you, and people, psychologically, they value that. You're revealing something about you, and they are more willing to interact with you if you are already giving some private information, even if it's something that's not so personal, but psychologically, that's the effect. So it's very, very effective to say to someone, me gusta la cerveza. I like beer. And then you try to engage with the person. ¿Y a ti? How about you? And then you find something in common or things that you may disagree, but you are already chatting about something. You may do the opposite. No me gusta bailar. I do not like to dance. ¿Y a ti? How about you? And also, it's possible that hate brings people together. It's very possible. So you may talk about your dislikes and find some common ground with the other person. And you may also ask, ¿te gusta leer? Do you like reading? Or, ¿Te gusta escuchar música? Do you like to listen to music? ¿Te gusta ir al cine? Do you like to go to the movies? ¿Te gusta ver series? Do you like to watch TV shows? And well, almost everybody listens to music and watches TV, so it's very hard to, well, find a negative reaction if you talk about these topics. So music, everybody listens to music, so let's talk about it, okay? And what you must do if you're talking to a native Spanish speaker is to ask him or her, ¿qué te gusta comer? Because, well, almost everybody enjoys eating and talking about food. So if you're in Spain, you may be eating out with friends, and instead of speaking about anything, you're talking about the food. So you're eating and you're talking about food that you have already cooked, that you have well tried, anything. So people can talk very, very long time about food. Okay, so it's very popular topic in Spain and in Spanish-speaking countries generally. Everybody enjoys eating or maybe cooking and talking about that. So just ask the person, ¿qué te gusta comer? Or may ask, ¿qué no te gusta comer? What do you not like to eat? And you will surely, well, start a conversation that can be very long about food. Okay, so here you have all these phrases. And after that, well, let's talk to complete strangers. How do you do that? You do not have to be shy, okay? Because native Spanish speakers, not all of them, of course, but they tend to be very chatty, okay? And they tend to be very welcoming to foreigners. Normally, I can't tell that for everyone, but in general, that's what people do. If you are a native Spanish speaker and you find a tourist and this tourist starts speaking with you, even with broken Spanish, you try to be very friendly and welcoming because, well, you appreciate that this person is interested in your language and your culture. So don't be shy. If you are learning Spanish and if you're traveling, do speak with total strangers, okay? What's the worst that can happen? Well, that they don't understand you. They will not make fun of you. Normally don't. So don't worry, okay? You get a chance to, well, talk to people in their native language, okay? So let's see what excuses can you have to, well, practice your Spanish when you're traveling to any country where people speak Spanish. You can ask, ¿hay un buen restaurante aquí cerca? So food, as I told you, food is a joker. You can use it anytime with anyone, okay? And if you are, as a tourist on a city, just forget your smartphone apps. Just ask locals, where do you get a good meal around here? ¿Hay un buen restaurante aquí cerca? Is there a good restaurant around here? Or even, ¿dónde se come bien por aquí? Where can you have a good meal around here? And you will be sure that the locals will give you good information about where can you have authentic food from this region. Okay? And you also may ask, ¿qué comida es típica de aquí? What food is typical from here? Okay? And people will be proud to share their know-how with you, their knowledge of their own culture, their own city. So do that because people will engage with you in a conversation. Normally, I can't make any promises, but it's very probable. And, well, if you do not know what to talk about, ask about your surroundings. ¿Cómo voy a? If you ask for directions in Spanish, you do not need a lot of grammar. You just ask, ¿Cómo voy a? How do I get to? And then you name the place. ¿Cómo voy al centro? How do I get to the city center? And by saying that, even if you have no intention on going to the city center, you have a perfect excuse to talk to a stranger. And the stranger will be likely to help you because, well, people tend to, well, help people when they see that someone is asking for information. Okay, I cannot make any promises, but it's very probable that the native Spanish speaker will help you out. So, ¿cómo voy a? And then you name the place. How do I get to this place? And also possible, you, well, go to a bus stop and ask anyone. El bus 5 pasa por aquí. Does the bus number 5 stop at this bus stop? Goes here. So this is a great way of engaging with people in Spanish. And you may also pay a compliment. Okay, so for instance, you are a woman and you see another woman with a beautiful blouse. So you say to this woman, "Qué bonita tu blusa." You have a very beautiful blouse. And, well, normally people will, well, find that friendly of you, and with this small gesture of, well, friendliness, you will begin a conversation. I cannot make any promises, but it's very possible, okay? Or instead, you may say, "Me encanta tú," and then you say whatever thing the person is wearing. Okay, so this is a great way of making conversation. And after that, let's learn some filler words. Okay, what expressions do we have in Spanish to keep a conversation going, to show interest on the topic that is being, well, discussed? So you have in Spanish, sí, is a way of asking, oh, is that so? Is that right? Sí. You're not questioning what the person is saying, you're just showing interest. Sí. Okay. And also you may ask, ¿en serio? Really? You're not questioning, you're just, well, asking the person for more information. ¿En serio? Is that so? You may also want to say, sí. No? Sí, no is not a contradiction. You're agreeing and you're asking the person if that is right. Sí, no? That is right, isn't it? Sí, no? And you may also want to say wow. In Spanish, a very simple way of saying wow, saying that you are surprised positively or negatively, is to say vaya, vaya, just like this, vaya. Okay, and you may also say pues sí, is a way of saying yes, indeed, in Spanish, pues sí. And also possible, madre mía. Madre mía is oh my mother, literally, but well, you're just saying wow, okay? It's another way to say vaya, vaya, madre mía. You're expressing surprise here. And you may want to know how to say cool in Spanish, and you have a lot of different words for that. They are all informal, okay, because cool is a very informal expression. In Spain, people normally say guay, okay, so to something that is cool, that is nice, beautiful, whatever, guay in Spain. And in Mexico, it's very specific, and people over there, they say chido, padre. Okay, you may know the word padre. Padre is father. We have already seen madre mía, and now we see padre. Padre in Mexico has the meaning of cool. Okay, the same thing as chido over there. And you may say chévere in some regions in the Caribbean and South America. It's not very general, but it's common in many places over there. And in the Caribbean, people also say bacán. And in the Caribbean, people also say brutal. These expressions, they are informal and they are always positive. Brutal, well, it's positive, okay, in the informal way of talking in the Caribbean region. And as you know, paying a compliment is a very good way of, well, starting a conversation. So you just say in Spanish, qué bonito, qué bonita, qué bonito, you're referring to something that is a masculine noun, and qué bonita, you're referring to something that's a feminine noun. You may want to say, oh, that is cute. And in Spain, you say normally que cookie. Okay? Que cookie. It sounds a little cutesy. So if you're not a cutesy person, refrain from saying that because only cutesy people say that. But you may say, okay, if you say, oh, how cute, you can say that in Spain by saying que cookie. And in Latin America, the more general expression for that is que lindo, que linda. For instance, if you see someone walking a dog, you just say to the dog owner, que lindo, referring to the dog. And it's very possible that the person will start a conversation with you because, well, dog owners, they tend to be very proud of their dogs. So do that. Talk to people with dogs. It always works or almost always works. Okay? Well, here you have all these expressions, and at the end of the material that you can download, you will find some exercises. Okay? Well, thank you very much for being here. If you like the video, you can like it. If you want to subscribe to the channel, you have more interesting videos to learn Spanish the communicative way. And well, thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed learning all of this, and I hope you start speaking Spanish right away with people that you know, people that you do not know, whatever you like. Gracias y chao. Hi there, I just wanted to thank you for watching this video and to ask for a favor, because if you like this content, please like it, share it, and write a comment, because when you do that, YouTube understands that this content is relevant, and YouTube will show it to more people who want to learn languages. This way, you help other people find me, and you also help me because I can afford to keep on creating free YouTube videos. So thank you for your support, and I wish you a lot of fun and success learning a new language.